Welcome to another video from explainingcomputers.com. This time we're going to look at Manjaro. This is a popular Linux distro that I've run on many occasions over the years, although I've never made a dedicated Manjaro video. So let's go and take a closer look. Right. Here we are on the Manjaro homepage, where it explains that the distro takes the raw power and flexibility of Arch Linux and makes it more accessible for a greater audience. And so, before we click on Download, let's delve into what this means. As you're probably aware, there are hundreds of Linux distributions, or distros. However, most are based on another distro. For example, Ubuntu and many other distros are based on Debian. And, in turn, many distros, such as Linux Mint, are based on Ubuntu. So, there are loads of distros in the Debian Ubuntu family. Several other distros are based on Red Hat Enterprise Linux, whilst others, like Manjaro, are based on Arch Linux. And, to help us all get a feel of the different distro families, over here on Distro Watch they've got a fantastic periodic table of Linux distros. Here, different families are indicated in different colours, including the Debian Ubuntu distros, Red Hat distros, Arch Linux distros, and so on. So, how does Arch Linux differ from Debian? Why would we want an Arch family distro? And where does Manjaro fit in? Well, for a start, Arch Linux is a rolling release, which means that it's constantly updated. In contrast, most Debian-based distros are updated periodically with a new version known as a static point release. So, for example, there's a new long-term support release of Ubuntu every 2 years, with interim releases every 6 months. Inevitably, this means that static point release distros cannot always contain the latest Linux kernel updates and applications. So, if you want to run Linux at the bleeding edge and be the first to experiment with new features, you need to use a rolling release distro like Arch or one of its derivatives. Secondly, whilst Debian-based distros are focused on stability, as a rolling release, Arch Linux has a focus on experimentation, as it brings new features to users immediately before extensive testing can have occurred. Arch Linux also has a very strong focus on customization, with the default installation providing a minimal system which the user adds to as required. Over on the Arch Linux website, there's some fantastic documentation. This includes the FAQ, why would I not want to run Arch? As we can see, answers include not having the ability, time or desire to do it yourself, requiring support for an architecture other than x86-64, and believing that an operating system should configure itself, run out of the box, and include a complete default set of software and a desktop environment on the installation media. Personally, I absolutely do want an OS to configure itself, run out of the box, to come pre-configured with a desktop and standard applications, and to support non-x86 architectures. And this brings us back to Manjaro, which is an Arch Linux distro that provides just this. As we can see, if we scroll down, Manjaro allows users to select a version which balances their preferred mix of stability and new features. So let's scroll back up here and click on Download, where we can see straight away that Manjaro does come with a pre-installed desktop environment, with the official images giving us the choice of KDE Plasma, XFCE or GNOME. Although, if we go down a bit further, we also see there are some community images, and these include desktops such as Cinnamon, which is the default in Linux Mint. But here we're going to be sticking with KDE Plasma up there, although just before we go to this, it's worth noting that here these are x86 downloads. If I click on x86 here, we can select instead ARM, and we find there are lots of different bits of ARM hardware supported by Manjaro. Specifically down here we can see lots of models of Raspberry Pi, although not including the Pi 5 or Pi 500 at this time, Orange Pi boards, Pine boards, some Cardass boards at the top here, etc. And we'll have a look at ARM Manjaro a bit later in the video. But for now we'll go back to x86 and our choice of a KDE Plasma, and we could just click on download. Although if we want to, we can click on more, and this gives us the option to select a minimal image, in other words an image with very little pre-installed software, or we can stick with the full image. And if you do want to select the minimal image, select minimal and click on image there, and you'll see you'll get the minimal ISO, which I don't particularly want. I'm going to go back here and just click on download. This will give us the full image, which we can see at the top here I've already downloaded. So I'm not going to download it again. I will save their bandwidth. It's a 4 GB download. And rather, I'm going to go straight to Balena Etcher, which is all set up to write our Manjaro ISO file to a USB drive. So I will click on Flash and confirm to Windows everything is OK. And as we speed on through, Etcher will now write and test our Manjaro installation media. Right. Here we are booting from our Manjaro USB drive, and we're doing so on the i5-10400 test rig that I often use for Linux reviews. This is currently fitted with a blank SSD and no other drives, and as you can see we've got lots of menu options here, and it's nice to see one of them is boot with proprietary drivers, which should use the official NVIDIA driver for this system's NVIDIA graphics card. This reminds me of a similar NVIDIA driver option we get with a Zorin OS boot menu and makes it very easy to set up a system with NVIDIA graphics. Note that if you have AMD or Intel graphics, the standard option boot with open source drivers should be fine. But here we'll go with the proprietary for NVIDIA and press enter, and we'll use the magic of filmmaking to speed on through. And here we are, we're welcome to Manjaro, running here from the live USB drive. And I'm just going to get rid of that, and I'm also going to right click the desktop and select display configuration and set the global scale here I think to 150, just so we can see things a bit more clearly in this video. And if we look down in the menu here and we go to settings, we can see that we do have NVIDIA X server settings there. We're clearly using the proprietary NVIDIA driver. Anyway, let's move on from that and do an install. Just click up here for the installer, and here it is. Very different to the install experience for typical Arch Linux. And as you can see, we're going to be installing Manjaro Linux 24.2, otherwise known as Yonada, which is from December 2024. And in this context, it's worth noting that just because Manjaro is a rolling distro doesn't mean it doesn't have version numbers and names. It's just that they're not delivered as static upgrades. Anyway, let's continue with the installer. I'll go for UK English if I can. There we are, British English, and next. My location is fine, as is the keyboard setting. And on this screen, it's already selected the option Erase Disk to install Manjaro on our selected storage device. Has to be this Kingston SSD. There will be options here if you've got other operating systems on your computer to do a dual boot. If you're a regular viewer of this channel, you know I don't like dual booting from a single drive. I think a dual drive dual boot is much safer, but the option will exist here if that's your choice. So let's click on next. I now have to enter some details to set up an account, a local account on this system. There we go, and next again. And we can see here that not only does Manjaro come with an Office package, it actually comes with a choice of Office packages. We can have either LibreOffice or FreeOffice. And as we so often see LibreOffice, let's choose FreeOffice. Let's be wild and exciting. So once again, we'll click on Next. And then finally down here, we can now click on Install. And as usual, in any good installer, it says, are you really sure? Do you want to do this? We do. I'll click on Install now. And there we are, the installer is working. It's a lovely installer here in Manjaro, although we won't sit and watch it, as once again, we will speed on through. And there we are, it's finished. So let's click Restart Now and Done. And it hasn't told me to remove my installation media, but I'll do so anyway. And here we are booting into Manjaro. And there we go, we're all sorted. Who said it is hard to set up an Arch Linux based distro? Here with Manjaro, we've just proved that this isn't always the case. And so now, as always in my videos, I'm going to make a few scaling changes, and I'll come back to you after that. Greetings! Here I am back again, and as you can see, I've been experimenting. And this has included not just some scaling changes, but also choosing a new desktop background, making some changes to the panel, and selecting a new theme. And here on this KDE Plasma desktop, this is all very straightforward. We just go to Settings and System Settings, like that, and it'll come up, there we are. And if we just scroll down and go to, for example, Colors and Themes as a starting point, we can choose our global theme, we can choose different colors, application styles, what they call the plasma style, window decorations, icons, cursor settings, etc. And if you want to know more, last year I did a whole video on the KDE Plasma desktop, which I'll link in the video description. So let's take a look around. We've got here in Manjaro the Dolphin file manager. There it is. We have got the Firefox web browser pre-installed, which is of course just the Firefox web browser, here taking us to the Christopher Barnett YouTube channel, my other channel where I make videos about all kinds of non-computing things. Anyway, sticking with Manjaro, let's take a look at what's pre-installed, and although this is a full installation, there's not too many things pre-installed. There's certainly no bloatware in this installation. We look at the top, you see we've got an advanced text editor. Under graphics we've got various viewers. Under internet we've got Firefox and a few tools. Under multimedia, we basically have players, including the VLC media player. We've got various settings, system tools, and utilities. And I just skipped past, as you probably saw, Office, where we installed, as you may remember, FreeOffice. This confused me initially because I thought there's no spreadsheet. There's a text thing, which obviously word processor, presentation package, and plan maker. I thought there was a project management package. It isn't. This is a spreadsheet, so there is a spreadsheet here, and there it is. And there's also a word processor, which is what we just saw under text. And I've taken a bit of time to configure this and play around with this. And my conclusion is this is not as good as LibreOffice. So my tip for you is, when installing Manjaro, opt for LibreOffice, not FreeOffice. If we want to add new applications, Manjaro has the software manager down here on the panel. Here it is. And this is very clear, very straightforward, very easy to use. We've got applications obviously here which you can just scroll down. There are various categories, as you would expect: photo and video, music, productivity, communication, education, games, etc. Or we can search. So for example, if we wanted to install the GIMP photo editor, we could go GIMP there, and there it is, look, like that. And let's just select GIMP, and we will install GIMP. Then we have to click on apply, like that, and confirm with our password. And then it gives us this message about optional dependencies. I'm just going to press cancel on that. And then finally, we will click on apply. And whilst GIMP is installing, it's worth noting that by default, Manjaro installs applications from its own dedicated software repositories. Anyway, with that noted, the installation here has been completed. So let's just, rather than running it from there, let's see if it appeared in graphics. It does. There is GIMP. Let's run it up. Always good to run up the GNU image manipulation program. And there it is. It clearly works, which is fantastic. Although for now, we're going to move on from that and talk a little bit about settings. We go back to the menu here. We go back into settings. You'll see as previously, we've got our NVIDIA settings, because on this system we've got an NVIDIA graphics card, and we opted to have the proprietary NVIDIA driver installed. And this means that we can configure things here with all the settings available, as you can see on this screen, including thermal settings, etc. So this is where we can set everything up graphically for an NVIDIA graphics card if you have one installed. Related, it's worth taking a look at the Manjaro Settings Manager, which we find surprisingly enough in Settings. There it is, the Manjaro Settings Manager, like that. Rather small font here, but there's lots of exciting things we can do here. And these include selecting the Linux kernel we want to be running. Here we can see we're running kernel 6.1241, but we could go to a more experimental one if we wished. I'm not going to do that, but I thought I'd point out it is possible very straightforwardly in this graphical tool. We go back to all settings. We've also got here hardware configuration, and this allows us to manage drivers and to, for example, change the driver if we wished for our NVIDIA graphics card. We can see that it's got the proprietary NVIDIA driver installed, and if you had other hardware that needed a driver installing, maybe, I don't know, a Wi-Fi card, it would appear here and you could opt to either install a proprietary driver or an open source driver, and all without going anywhere near the terminal. Talking of which, you may remember that earlier we noted how Manjaro is available in different branches, which offer a trade-off between stability and access to new features. Here we've installed a full desktop image, which by default is set to the stable branch, and this is what most users are likely to want and what I would certainly recommend. However, using the terminal, it is possible to select another branch by changing the mirrors used by the Pacman package manager. And to do this, let's just open up the terminal to show you the basis of this. Here is our terminal, and to see the branch we're currently running, we can use this command here, like that. You can see we're currently running stable, but if we wanted to change this, we could enter a command like this, which would select the testing branch. And after executing this command, and I'm not going to do it here, we would then need to enter this command to set things up, to rebuild the mirror list, and to update our packages. As you probably gathered, changing the branch is not something I'm personally interested in doing, but I thought I should indicate the possibility if you happen to be an adventurous soul who wishes to live on the bleeding edge of Linux development. Now, I said we'd take a look at the ARM versions of Manjaro, so here we are back on the Manjaro download page where I've selected ARM and also Raspberry Pi 400 3B+, 3B and 02, as you can see. And here there are images available with 6 different desktops, including GNOME, KDE Plasma, Mate, as you can see. And here I've downloaded the GNOME version. It's vanilla GNOME, and it's what we're running here on a Raspberry Pi 4. And specifically, we're running on this Raspberry Pi 4 4GB model in this nice heatsink case, and it's running very well. Not as nippy as it would be on the i5 we were just running on, but perfectly usable. This is what is pre-installed. It's slightly different to what we get on the x86 version. For example, if we go into settings, we have fewer things we can tweak here. We always find things slightly different in ARM versions of operating systems. And I remember a few years ago, I used a Raspberry Pi 4 for all of my computing for a whole week, and for parts of that week I ran Manjaro, specifically when I wanted to make presentations, because things work better in Manjaro for that than in Raspberry Pi OS. I specifically remember projecting from Manjaro in a lecture theatre. And so if you're looking for something different to run on a Raspberry Pi, then why not consider Manjaro? Finally, I thought we'd run Manjaro on a second ARM computer, and I've picked this one, the Orange Pi 800, which made a recent appearance on the channel. And here we are on the desktop, and that desktop is XFCE, which is running very nicely on this system. It's very responsive. We go to the menu, it really is running very nicely indeed. And if I launch a browser, and we'll just give it a second to do its thing, to load up and to go to the page it's going to, which is my second YouTube channel. We're only running here from a microSD card. And there we are. And if we go to my test video, and I'll get it running full screen 1080p. And here we are. And as you can see, this is very good 1080p playback on this ARM computer. And as you'll know if you're a regular viewer of this channel, we often don't get good 1080p video playback on ARM machines. We don't have the appropriate video drivers and things installed. But here, after things are settled, they're working very well indeed. So this is a very good sign. This is a very impressive performance in ARM Manjaro. Manjaro is a very nice distro that makes it easy for anybody to enter the world of Arch Linux. Personally, I do prefer a point release distro for a daily driver, as for me, stability is far more important than access to the latest features. But if you do want a rolling distro, then Manjaro is an excellent choice, and it's great that it's available for so many ARM as well as x86 computers. But now that's it for another video. If you've enjoyed what you've seen here, please press that like button. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. And I hope to talk to you again very soon.